Welcome to Tips for the Transition, where we have deep, meaningful conversations about life. We talk about how significant changes like divorce, grief, and career change can affect us, our family, our relationships, and our work, and how to move beyond them. I'm your host, Maria Tomás-Keegan, certified career and life coach for women, and I'm here to support you through the messy seasons of life so you can answer big questions like who am I now and how do I move on from here? If you're ready to consider new options, be inspired, and meet incredible women who are on this life journey with us, you're in the right place. You'll find something in each episode to give you hope and encourage you to move from panic to powerful, from rocky to resilient, and from upside down to right side up. This is Tips for the Transition. Hello, thanks so much for joining us. I'm happy you're here. I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, your host. One of the things I love to do is help professional women who want to feel fulfilled in their careers but don't, and who want to create more harmony in their lives when something is feeling a little bit off. Because I believe that when your career is a soulful fit, it won't become a soul-sucking experience. And everyone in your world wins when you are doing what you love to do. So another thing I love to do is bring you inspiring guests who are role models and resources to help you explore career options for yourself. So if something strikes a chord while we're chatting here today, check out the show notes below so you can see how to connect with my guest and me. So today we're going to talk about practical strategies to create the environment for taking a leap of faith and making brave moves in your career and indeed in your life. It's a story of evolving, shifting, being uncomfortable, and overcoming fear, all while starting something new. My guest is Gina Casbarro. She's a certified life designer and Feng Shui consultant who empowers her clients to blaze their own path and design the life and space of their dreams. Gina's passion for coaching began as a manager at Lululemon, where she spent more than 8 years coaching hundreds of people to develop as leaders and crush their goals. Her love of nature, symbolism, and intuition led her to Feng Shui, and she now weaves these passions together to support her clients in aligning their mindset, lifestyle, their environment with their goals and their values. So Gina works and lives as a digital nomad, traveling the US and hosting the podcast Follow Your Spark, where she shares inspiring interviews of others who've created lives they love. So we call this episode Not Starting Over, Starting Again. Welcome, Gina.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here, and I can't wait to get into this conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. Thank you so much for being here. So let's pull the curtain back a little bit and set the stage for our audience. Tell us a bit about your career experiences.
Yes. So, last 15 years, I would say I've gone through 4 different careers. I majored in advertising and I worked for a large ad agency in Miami for the first couple years of my career. And then I realized that while the people that I worked with and the environment was fun and exciting, it wasn't necessarily fulfilling or really, speaking to what mattered most to me. So I came across an opportunity to teach English in South Korea. Some friends of mine were going and shared the idea with me. And I quickly became intrigued and thought, why not? What's the worst that can happen? And ended up moving to South Korea to teach English and travel and feed my values of adventure and curiosity and travel. And it was an incredible year where I learned all kinds of things in a completely different environment. And after being abroad for about a year and a half, I ended up coming back to South Florida, where I am from, and proceeded to have a quarter life crisis and ask myself, what am I going to do now? What's next? And I ended up working with my first life coach and really diving into different practices and reflective questions to explore, what are my skills? What are my strengths? What are my passions? And where might that lead? And another totally unknown opportunity presented itself again in my life to work for Lululemon. And I was randomly recruited at an event that I was at and had no idea about Lululemon, had never heard of it, had never worn any clothes. This was about 10 years ago. And I went, to research the company and quickly learned that they were really into personal development. They really valued health and wellness, community. They were doing all these really incredible things. So I started working for them. And then 6 months later, those inner judge voices came up whispering, like, this is not a real job. You have a degree, you're an adult, like working in retail is not a real respectable adult job, quote unquote. And I quit. And I went to work at the University of Miami in their study abroad office. And when I was back behind a desk 9 to 5, quickly realized that was not the life for me. And I went back to Lululemon and they shared with me, my manager said, I realized that we could have helped you more see how this could be a career. And I ended up working for them for the next 8 years and learning so much about myself, about personal growth and development, about training teams, developing leaders, coaching, goal setting. And it was a completely life-changing experience and company. And it was also there that I realized that was my favorite part of my job. And a couple years ago, I transitioned from my work from Lululemon. I kind of pared that down and started developing my own business as a life coach and Feng Shui consultant. So that's kind of the evolution that I've gone through over the past 15 years.
Wow. So that's not an unusual kind of path, although, not everybody just drops everything here and goes to South Korea for a year or more. But very often people change jobs and they are pretty diverse in
Mm-hmm.
their nature as they're trying to figure out what really fits. So how has each kind of evolution of your journey, and the changes, transitions in your career, how has that set you up for what was the next phase each time?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I think so often I've heard clients kind of judge themselves for the path and jumping from one thing to the next. But I've really found personally and seen with so many people that I've now interviewed that everything, each step of the way, helps me learn a little bit more about myself, whether it's what kind of environment that I want to work in. For example, I don't love sitting behind a computer 9 to 5 in a very structured workplace. I like having more flexibility and creativity. So every job along the way, I learned, oh, I enjoy this, or oh, that, structure is not for me, or I love coaching and got to develop those skills there. I loved facilitating, which I experienced first as a teacher in South Korea. So every step of the way, I'm accumulating these like pieces of this puzzle and strengthening different passions, different gifts, different talents so that they prepare me for whatever, trusting that every step that I've been through along the way has given me something that I've learned, whether it's something that I know now that I don't like that, both of them are valuable. So no matter
You are
what our journey is.
you are so right, and I'm so glad you said that because it is just as important for us to find out what we don't want to do anymore as it is to figure out what it is we love to do. And that as you experienced the different um, phases of your own career as it shifted and changed, identifying the pieces, like you
Mhm.
said, pieces of the puzzle, identifying the pieces that were a perfect fit, what I like to call a soulful fit.
Hmm.
So your experience in that is very similar to my journey in that, I spent 30 years in corporate, and I was doing it because that's what I thought I should be doing all that time, and that I need to, leverage all of that and work my way up the ladder and all of that. But when I realized what I loved most about what I did, what it was the coaching and mentoring my staff, other people's staffs, and when I pulled that piece out, when that corporate gig ended, I realized going back to another corporate gig was not it. But if I could
Yeah.
do that coaching and mentoring piece of it, what would that look like? How would that
Mhm.
feel? What would that, how would I do that? So
Exactly.
I love that you said pulling the pieces out. It's understanding what your skills are and how to leverage them, and what is it you're passionate about doing, and what is it you don't want to do anymore.
Mhm. And we
Yeah,
and should, that power of should is so strong. Like, I left Lululemon because I shouldn't be doing that. But yet
right,
that's what was that soul connection for me. That was my soul work. And when we let go of what other people think of us, or what we're judging ourselves for, what we think others are judging
right,
ourselves for, that's when we allow ourselves to pursue what we truly want and create a life that's really authentic, when letting go of those expectations, whether
right,
internal or external.
and that is personally fulfilling, not living up to other people's expectations of us,
Mhm.
or living somebody else's values, right? All
Yes.
right, so I know you've done a lot of traveling.
Yes.
Um, I suspect we'll hear a little bit about the last year that you've just spent. So you've met a lot of people on your
Mhm.
travels, and I know you've interviewed for your podcast a lot of people. Tell tell us what you've learned, or noticed about other people's career paths and journeys.
Yeah. One of the biggest things I've noticed is how many people, if you were to ask them today, would you ever have expected like where you're at in this moment of your life? And so many people like 10 years ago never could have predicted that they'd be where they are today. And it stemmed from them following that soul calling, following that spark, following whatever intrigued them or felt aligned with them, and trusting that flow and taking it one step at a time, and not pushing or forcing, into the shoulds, but really when people just followed whatever, sometimes seemingly random path, it led somewhere beautiful and somewhere magical and somewhere just more aligned than anything they ever could have predicted. And I think that matters because so many people want the perfect plan. They want to know exactly, okay, 10 years from now, what's my career going to look like? I have to have it perfectly mapped out and everything set up. And so many people I talk to, that's just not how it went. It went, their dream lives and their dream careers came from following what felt aligned in the moment and not judging if that passion changed, and if they chose to change directions or take on a new career or make a change. And that's when the most ease, the most joy came, when they let themselves go with that flow.
And that's so hard to do.
It can be very
You
hard
know,
to do.
I
Yes.
think this is where a lot of my clients get stuck, right? So they've been doing what they've been doing for so long. They can't imagine themselves doing anything else. However, they don't really feel fulfilled. They don't really feel like
Mhm.
they are aligned with, they're just not getting out of it.
Mhm.
And they might have been passionate about it years ago, but they aren't anymore. But
Mhm.
that's where people can get stuck, because that word should, we should ourselves to death sometimes. um, but it's that allowing. We were talking about this a little before we went on the air today. Just allowing yourself to kind of sit with the discomfort for a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and allow it to flow. Allow yourself the time, the
Yes.
grace to figure it out, and not be in do mode all the time,
Yes.
but be
And I think with
comfortable just in the be mode.
yes, 100%. And I think something that was really important in my journey, and I've heard again and again with people I've interviewed. I originally, when I was working for Lululemon as a store manager, thought, okay, I'm going to build up my business while I'm a store manager. And when my business is at its peak, then I'm going to resign as the store manager and I'm going to step into that. And that's just not how it went. I wasn't able to do that at the same time. And I ended up resigning as a store manager and needed that kind of ramp period to develop that, but I had to give myself more space. And I'm thinking of a woman who I met in Canada who was a like digital illustrator. She worked in textiles originally in England and then changed careers, moved to Canada. And in between, she's now a very successful digital artist illustrator. But in between, she was working in a cafe or she was a waitress somewhere and she loved it. And I think so often when people have reached the peak of a career, to go back and do something like that, like to be a waitress or to take time off or to just take a year off or take 6 months off, we can put so much pressure on ourselves of like, oh my God, I'm not producing, I'm not achieving, I'm not at that peak that I was at. But life, nature, human beings, we operate in cycles. We're not always at peak performance or the
Right.
height of our career. And it's okay to make space. And that's why we talked about starting over, not starting again. You're not at ground zero. You still have all the wealth of experience and skills and everything else that you created over your lifetime. And I think it's about having that be enough for you because I know at times I've like thought about, oh, people might judge me because I'm not, at some peak. And it's like, who's
Yeah.
really judging me? It's me. It doesn't matter
Right.
what anyone else thinks. So if we can
Right.
cultivate that strong sense of belief and acknowledgement for ourselves, that's what matters.
Right. And caring what other people think is something we should care less about. Not it's a simple concept, not always easy to do.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sure you took some hits in confidence as you went along the way. What helped you build your confidence and worthiness and belief
Yes.
when you started something new?
Something that really helps is for me is to spend time and reflect on what do I want to acknowledge myself for? What do I want to celebrate myself for? I actually have an Excel document on my computer. I'm like a Excel junkie that has tabs for like all of my strengths, whether it's from strength finders assessments or different personality tests or even feedback that I've received over the years. I kind of have this file of things I want to celebrate about myself and things I want to acknowledge about myself and things that I've learned and skills that I've developed over the years that I continue to add to. So having something like that, or just simply taking out a piece of paper and journaling on it, especially when you're going through times of transition, I think is so important to reinforce that internal sense of worthiness, of confidence, and I know sometimes it can be hard to reflect on that for ourselves. So even asking the people around you and getting feedback from the people around you, can help, has boosted me up when I need that boost if I'm
Yeah.
struggling to find it for myself.
Yeah, you hit on something that I think is so important, and a lot of people gloss over it, right? They don't acknowledge everything they know how to do, all of the things that
Mhm.
they've been that have brought success in the past. They think because they are in this lull right now, in this period of unknowing, um, and that's unusual for them, and it's very uncomfortable.
Mhm.
When they are in that situation, their confidence takes a hike
Mhm.
because they don't spend the time, like you are suggesting, to focus on all the things they really know how to do. And
Mhm.
then from that, this is an exercise I do with my clients all the time. When you've got that, and I suggest an Excel spreadsheet, just do the laundry list and
Mhm.
then drag and drop those things from that list of all the things you know how to do into that middle column, which is all the things of those. What do you really love to do? What are you
Mhm.
really passionate about? What gets you up in the morning because you get to go do that? And then that third column is of those things you know how to do. What do you not want to do anymore? And all of this just brings confidence and clarity. And
Mhm.
if you spend the time in that, so I'm so glad that you brought that up, that you do that kind of an exercise, because when you are, when you're celebrating, as you say, celebrating your achievements, your accomplishments, who you are, what you bring to the world, there is a lot of confidence that can be gained from that.
Yes. And we were talking a little bit before we, like you said, went on air of how much people sometimes want to just like rush on to what's next, but really
Yeah.
like taking the time to pause and reflect, take the time to celebrate, make a list, when December 31st, before setting your goals for what's next, look back. What do you want to celebrate? What do you want to acknowledge yourself for? I do this monthly. I have like a monthly manifestation journal that I, add to all the time. And you can even have a physical box in your space, whether it's like an acknowledgement box. I'm a Feng Shui consultant also, so I love bringing in the physical reminders that when you're feeling down, you just pull out one of those pieces of
Yeah.
paper, whether it's client testimonials or cards that people have written you or anything else that just gives you that boost and reminds you how valuable you are and what impact you've had on other people as well.
Yeah. It's such a worthwhile exercise. It truly is, in bringing, in raising your confidence level and bringing clarity. Yeah, I love that. All right, so we've talked about discomfort. There can be a lot of that, some trepidation, of course, and downright fear that can come up when you're thinking about leaving a career that you're in and have been for a while. Maybe you've been really successful at it, and thinking about pursuing something new. What helped you navigate those feelings of discomfort, trepidation, and fear?
hmm So, one of the reasons why I became a feng shui consultant in the first place was because as a coach, it's all in the mind and I can be very logical, very kind of like type A, very analytical, and really a lot of the things we've been talking about already, whether it's collecting your strengths, making that Excel document, it can be again in the mind. And when we just talked about these fears, these trepidations, these emotions can come up. To me, it's so important to develop and cultivate practices that help strengthen your emotional well being, that help build your resilience, that help your faith. So, having practices that are going to strengthen your energy are so important for me, whether that's meditation, movement. I take walks multiple times a day, giving yourself breaks so that you're not just trying to force the thinking all the time. You're giving yourself time to process, whether it's working with your home, decluttering, doing these other things that are physical, tactile, energetic, ensuring that I've built those things into my habits and practices. And it's one of the key things that I share with my clients of these tools to strengthen your vibration. So, not thinking that you have to solve everything from the logical mindset and really building these other muscles, intuition, trust, faith. And really, it's the things that a lot of times people want to put on the back burner. So, those are some of the things that have mattered most to me.
Yeah, put them on the back burner because they're not sure how to do it, some of them, or they're not sure that they will be successful for them, so they're not willing to try.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are lots of things that hold people back from exploring, right? And we were talking about the stop doing. I'm a doer, always have been, um,
Mm-hmm.
but giving myself the grace to just be. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not comfortable at all for me. I'm in a space right now of that where I have to consciously talk to my subconscious and say this is a time uh, for grace, for
Mm-hmm.
space, for creating an environment that allows me to just be instead of do.
Hmm.
So that's not easy to do for most overachievers, for
Yes.
women in careers that are fast paced, and they are high volume, and their perception is, and it may be a reality for them, that that's what's expected of them. But if that's not feeling comfortable right now, then you need to find a way to remove yourself from that, step back from that, and give yourself some space to see what about that isn't feeling good to you right now. And
Yes.
what would you rather do and have for yourself? How would you like to create that environment where you can design
Hmm.
the the career, the life that is a soulful fit for you?
Hmm. And to share, if people are listening to this and they're like, okay, well, what do I do? Where should I start? Some of my favorite tools are intuitive journaling. Every morning, I do something called morning pages. I read a book, The Artist's Way. Some people may be familiar with it. It is amazing, by Julia Cameron. She has all kinds of practices to be, to tap into intuition, tap into flow. There's no prompt. You just write whatever you want. So that's something I do daily, as well as doing an artist date. And she talks about this artist date is something that you can take yourself on a date, whether once a week, once a month, and you go somewhere solo by yourself, somewhere that intrigues you, is inspiring to you, sparks your creativity, and you just give yourself that mental space to not have to like think about anything in particular.
Right,
You just see
right.
what comes to you and you get ideas and you get clarity and you get re-inspired, because we need to fill up our own energy in order
Yeah.
to push ourselves out of our comfort zone, to try something new, to move through these times of transition that can be challenging. So it's so necessary more than ever when we're going through these challenging moments to make time for these practices. And it's
Yeah, it's
why
like, go
yeah, I was
ahead.
just going to say it's why it's one of the main things I share with my community. So I've got a list of my top 15 transformational tools that I'm happy to share with your community as well.
Thank you. That's great. Very gracious of you. Yeah, it's giving yourself permission to take a break. It's a physical break, a mental break, a spiritual break, whatever it is, an emotional break, whatever it is for you that you need a break from. Give yourself permission to just take the break. And that and it in what inspires you, the kind of break you decide to take, is all very personal. So some people will just want to go read a book, get themselves lost in an historical novel that just takes them away. It's a break. Or go for
Mm-hmm.
a walk in nature like you like to do multiple times a day. So that's a break for you, that gives you the break you need to kind of reset, recharge, just adjust to what's going on in your day to day. So
Yes.
for some people, being a beginner at something is a vulnerable time. Uncomfortable for sure. We've used that word a lot today, because, you know, all of this that we're talking about it takes you out of your comfort zone. It absolutely does. And people are not comfortable being outside their comfort zone. So I like to think about things that are fun, because I think if we're not having fun, we
Mm-hmm.
probably shouldn't be doing it. So, what advice would you give our audience about how to have fun when you're starting something new?
Yes. So sometimes when you're thinking about starting a new career, that can feel a little scarier and a little harder to have fun in this journey. You might have kinds of pressures. So I like to do something not career related, like no pressure, low stakes, whether it's try a new recipe, try out a new hobby, plant something new, do something super low stakes that is something that you can try for the first time and be a beginner at, but there's no consequences if it doesn't turn out well or if you burn the new thing that you're cooking. So doing these other things strengthens the same muscles in your brain that allow you to be a little bit more open when you're trying something new in your career. So you get to, again, kind of pull those puzzle pieces and see like what helped me in this other situation, whether cooking or new hobby or you're learning to paint or whatever it is. And then you can apply that in other areas of your life, whether it's your career or anything else that's really important to you that you wanted to step into something new for the first time.
I love that. So it's the same principle of taking the skills you already have and applying them to something new. But in this case, you're suggesting that you try something new that I love, you said, low stakes, right? Low risk, right? It's not going to really matter to anyone, including yourself, if you succeed or fail, low stakes.
Mm-hmm.
But it gives you the opportunity to exercise those muscles that give you kind of the permission to step out and try something new in a riskier way, because
Mm-hmm.
you're developing the skills to do that.
Exactly.
And one of those muscles is resilience. So
Yes.
the more you don't do well in trying something new, the more you build those resilience muscles and you say, okay, well, that didn't work, so I'm going to try it this way.
Mm-hmm.
And you bounce back and try something again. I I love what you just said. That's a great way to approach it, so that in a low risk way you can test the waters,
Yeah,
see how well you do trying something new, and then you can get bigger and better at it as you move forward. Love
exactly.
that.
Because these are all skills that we can develop. I think sometimes people don't think of resilience or intuition or trust as skills you can develop, and you can. There are absolutely ways that we can develop these skills,
Right.
these softer skills, more feminine skills, however you want to look at them, that are just as important as the hard skills we might be learning in whatever profession or job we're in.
Yeah, in fact, I would say they are foundational, right?
Yeah.
If you don't, you resilience, confidence, those are absolutely learned, and they are foundational for you, if you want to be successful in trying something new, right?
Yes.
You have to have the confidence, the faith, and you have to be guided by something, your values, your intuition, whatever that may be. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of every episode we do, we I ask my guests to share some very practical tips and strategies that our audience can take away. It's why I call the show Tips for the Transition. So, Gina, would you share your first tip with us?
I certainly will. And these tips are going to touch on the concepts that we've talked about already. So, my first tip is to reinforce your strengths and gifts. And I talked about how important this was to reflect on this for myself. And I'm going to give you 3 questions that you can journal on yourself, as well as I invite and encourage you to ask people in your life, whether your friends, your family, your past clients, your past coworkers, to answer these questions as well, because so often people will gush about us when sometimes it's hard for us to reflect on that. So, question number 1: what are my superpowers? What do people come to me for? Question number 2: where have I offered substantial value to others? And question number 3: are there any other unique strengths or gifts I want to celebrate? So journal on those, ask the people in your life, add them to your file, and look back on them anytime you need a confidence boost.
I love that. Those are 3 great questions. What are my superpowers? What do people come to me for?
Where
And
have
what,
I offered substantial value to others, and
yeah,
any other unique strengths and gifts I want to
yeah,
celebrate?
yeah. I love that. So you're right. It touches back on the celebrating your traits, your uniqueness. Love
Mhm.
that. All right. What's tip number 2?
Tip number 2: brings it back to those energetic practices. So for me, one of my key energetic practices that is so important daily is making sure that I have a morning routine that sets me up. And you've probably heard people talk about morning routines all the time. Maybe you have one, maybe you don't. And it's something that is foundational, to set me up. And that looks like meditation. For me, it looks like the intuitive journaling that I mentioned. It looks like exercise, whether even, a couple yoga poses or push-ups, or maybe you want to run around the block, whatever it is. And then reading something inspiring. So maybe there's a book that's going to fill your mind with new ideas or new perspectives, and then grounding in affirmations or new thoughts that you want to think about, maybe your intention for the day, and that can really guide everything else that happens that day. And then taking time to visualize what it is you want to create in your life moving forward, even if that's just how do you want to feel. And spending time in this intentional morning practice is, like I said, so foundational to me and gives you that energetic boost that will support you, especially in times of transition.
I love that you mentioned that. I have a morning routine as well. Here's one of the things I hear, and I suggest this highly. So we're on the same page. But some people say, I don't have time. What I want to say about that is it doesn't take much time. So Gina shared a number of different things. You don't have to do them all every morning. If what you can squirrel away for yourself in the morning before everyone else is up and about, or you pick up your cell phone or your tablet or your computer and start working away, right? Doing. Sit with yourself 15 minutes, 10 minutes, a half hour. I've worked my way up and I get up a little earlier to do this. That the first hour of my day is mine, all mine. And it changes. Does it change for you
Mm-hmm.
too? What you do
Yes,
in
for
the
sure. It
morning?
has, and there'll be different times in my life where I do more of those practices or less of those practices. And one thing that I will say that also can be a big help is bringing in your environment. Do you have a space in your home that you like to journal? Do you have
Yeah.
a space in a special coffee cup that when you get this teacup, it's your time to journal? And attaching those physical reminders, creating a beautiful space that you look at it and you're like, oh, that's my space for my morning practice. It again reinforces what you say is
Yeah.
important to you, what you want to start. So that environment is really key for me too.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great idea. All right. What's tip number 3?
So, tip number 3, and I have seen this for myself many times, especially this past year, is that so often I've wanted to focus on the next thing and focus on the next thing and think that that next external goal is what's going to make me happy or fulfill me. And I've been reminded again and again that how I want to feel is not dictated by my external circumstances. I can cultivate how I want to feel now. So, especially in the times that feel uncomfortable or those in betweens, the main question that I ask myself is how could this be the best moment of my life right now? And taking time to journal on that question, marinate on that question, talk to your family and friends about that question has been transformational for me to ground me back in gratitude and remember that I can feel exactly how I want to feel now without anything changing, without getting the next job, without getting the next promotion. And it opens up so much more space and possibility and ability to enjoy and be comfortable in the uncomfortable by asking that question. So I highly recommend it.
Okay, repeat the question one more time.
The question is, how could this be the best moment of your life right now? Because so
I
often
love
we
it.
think it's going to be better when. No,
Right,
how could this
right.
moment be the best?
Yep. So often we are focused on what has been, right? How we got here, all the things that have happened, or we're worried about the future. We spend so little time in the present.
Mm-hmm.
And and you're so right about um, how that will help to seat you in gratitude for everything that is right now, right?
Mhm.
And it is the best. You don't have to make it the best, just it is the best. If that is the truth, if it is the best, then there's there's sitting there, and we get back to the doer, right? The
Mm.
doer, thinking, how do I fix what happened?
Mm.
Or how do I make sure in the future, instead of just being present? Yeah. This is so powerful. This is
Mm.
so powerful, Gina. Thank you
I'm
so
glad.
much for being here.
My
I
pleasure.
really appreciate your energy, the energy that you bring, and I'm sure our viewers will as well. Speaking of which, I'm sure people are going to want to reach out to you. And what is the very best way for them to do that?
The very best way for them to do that is they can find me on my website at www.ginacasbarro, which is spelled Gina Casbarro, CASBARRO.com. So you can find me there, and it's the same on all my social media channels. So if you search my name, you'll probably find me.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here with us. And I want to thank you again, and we will stay in touch, I know.
Thank you so much. This is such a wonderful conversation.
Oh, you're welcome. All right. And for those who are watching and listening, I appreciate you for being a part of this community. So if you enjoyed this episode, my conversation with Gina, please leave us a comment or a review. And if there's a star rating available where you're listening or watching, pick a star. We'd love to get your feedback. And as I said at the top of the show, I love creating and sharing resources for professional women who feel stuck in their careers. So if something in this episode resonates with you and you'd like to get a fresh perspective on it, reach out. Let's have a chat. And if you look for the links below for Gina or for me, they're plenty of ways for us to continue this conversation. You could also find my private Facebook group, the Career Transition Roadmap, and we could continue the conversation there. So let's meet again here next Wednesday, as always, because you know what? I believe it's our time to thrive. So let's thrive together. Till next time, I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, helping you turn transition into triumph.